And I've shipped a bunch of code using front-end JavaScript frameworks. In fact, I've been working almost exclusively on front-end JavaScript heavy projects since, 2012. So just about the entire time I've been a developer. I work at a company called TableXI. It's a little bit like, it's not dissimilar from Test Double, but based in Chicago, also green. I think those are really the only important points. We focus more on agency work, which is building out a project from end to end. Most of our projects are on the smaller side, 200,000 to $1 million-ish for a fully functional Rails app. So my specialty is large front-end JavaScript code bases, stabilizing those, stabilizing their velocity, their quality, making sure we're building things that need to be built. But at TableXI, our project sizes are a bit small for large JavaScript code bases. So it has pushed me in a new direction, and I'm going to share some of that direction with you today. So I want a brief tour of exactly how we've gotten here, here being the web. I'm going to talk about what I feel is wrong about the way JavaScript is approached in most Rails projects. Then I'm going to show the hybrid approach that we're using at TableXI, and then give a concrete example with actual code that one can follow to build that exact thing, nothing hidden. So let's get started. So how we got here. So 1989, by the time 1989 rolled around, we had most of the web. Not most of it, but we had the important parts in place. We had GET and HTTP and a terminal-based web browser. And in fact, it's a bit hard to read, but Tim Berners-Lee in 1989 states that the World Wide Web, W3 in parentheses, is a wide area hypermedia information retrieval initiative aiming to give universal access to a large universe of documents. Essentially a linked web of documents, if I may use the word in the definition, which I may because I'm up here, might, and you're not. Thank you very much. It's a little different than, his vision is a little different than what we have today. In 1993, 1993, the image tag comes around. So at this time, some rudimentary graphical browsers are appearing, and we are having discussions around like how do we display images on an HTML document? Is that even a good idea? That, if I remember, Tim Berners-Lee didn't even want the image tag in the web. Also that year, the web becomes popularized by Mosaic, whose company becomes Netscape, or whose code base becomes Netscape. Also in 1993, CGI happens, which means we are already starting to move away from a web of documents to server-rendered apps, right? So not necessarily going to a URL and pulling down a static document, but an app whose contents can change depending on who's visiting it and the contents of the database, right? All the way back to 1993 and a little bit earlier, because CGI is just a formalization of some of the techniques that were being used. 95, JavaScript. in a very biblical sounding 10 days. We get that shipped in Netscape Navigator 2. In 1999, thanks to Microsoft, we get Ajax, which is a means of making an asynchronous request to a server from your website without changing which page you're on. We actually had something very similar to single-page apps, like all the way back to 1996, but nobody cared because you couldn't do anything with them, because they couldn't phone home and do stuff. But we get the first single-page app that anybody really cares about in 2004, which is Gmail. If we named types of architecture like we named naval ships, like a single-page app would be a Gmail-class application. It really is quite remarkable just how cutting-edge this technology was in 2004. And I had no freaking clue, not being a programmer in 2004. It was just, to me, it was just really neat that we could get a decent mail client in the web. 2004, Rails happens. Maybe you've heard of it. That link has the instruction manual, the first instruction manual I could find on Rails. I'll make sure to get the slides out there because that PDF is amazing. 2005, we get jQuery. In 2007, the beginning of the end of Flash begins to happen, even though Flash doesn't quite know it yet. 2008, the performance wars begins, at least begins in earnest. And I believe part of that is in response to the wide popularization of front-end JavaScript brought about by jQuery. In 2010, we get a little bit of structure, right? 2012, jQuery hits 50% saturation on the web, right? Like, who talks about a technology hitting saturation on the web? But by 2012, jQuery is at half of the worldwide websites, whether or not that's a good thing. But 2013 hits, a couple projects, Angular and Ember, they've been around for a while, but this is the year where they become performant enough to be usable, for the most part. So by 2013, that's when it becomes much more possible to build these JavaScript-heavy sites. And you talk to anybody who's doing consulting in 2013, and you would know that based on the number of single-page app rescue projects that you were involved in, which was plenty. So that's it. So thank you for indulging me. That's how we got there. So let's talk about what's wrong. And I want to talk about the all or nothing fallacy. On greenfield apps,